Watch this.
How smart are kids these days? It seems like the whole pandemic thing really impacted a lot of kids and their development. Well, a research team that includes a Boise State assistant professor spent January through May of 2020 working with elementary schoolers and teachers on the topic of civic engagement on major issues. That time frame, as you may remember, in 2020, January through May, a very wild time, well, it gave researchers insight into how elementary school students talked about and debated themes like COVID, something that was a growing unknown at the time in early 2020, still is. Now, specifically, the research question that they looked at, understanding how young students develop interactions and how they can explain concepts like common good in order to look beyond themselves. It's a big concept for second graders, right? Well, the study also looked at how teachers could best handle discussions on hot-button issues like the coronavirus. The research team says you may be surprised at how students tackled the topic. Researchers Esther Enright from Boise State and William Toledo from the University of Nevada had an interesting window into civic conversations among elementary students as COVID hit America in early 2020.
Since about 2016, I've been conceptualizing and thinking more about how do young kids really engage in civic thinking, kids as young as 7 and 8 years old.
Toledo and Enright look to take on a unique topic in their research.
How do we engage these students with issues in their communities in real and authentic ways? And how do we allow them to kind of take part in that civic discourse that we take part in as adults, but with issues that are developmentally appropriate and locally relevant?
The pair worked with elementary school students and teachers for the first 5 months of 2020. A big question at that time:
how do our children think about COVID, right, as a public issue?
Enright says students as young as second grade showed value in having critical conversations about COVID and the spread of the virus.
They were looking around them and they really needed a space where they can practice thinking out loud about their own opinions and what they're hearing from different people, and like on the news, like reporters like yourself, community leaders.
So what did they find in working with students and teachers on civic conversations? Well, kids aren't pushovers on their ideas.
There was no convergence in their beliefs, right? They didn't suddenly agree with one another. They didn't suddenly agree with the teachers. To this day, I'm not really sure Will and I really know what the teachers actually believe, which is a really exciting finding for us, because what it does is it shows that social studies is doing what it should be doing in our schools, which is providing these forums for children to practice being citizens.
Teaching students how to think, not what to think. Teaching them how to utilize evidence-based thinking and argumentation in ways that are productive instead of ways that are counterproductive. Our work really focuses on bringing civic discourse into classrooms, bringing frameworks and tools for educators to use with their students to help students think about locally relevant issues in their own communities. And the really important part that Esther's brought into this work is motivating and working with teachers in professional development settings to learn from them.
So I want to be very clear here. That story is just the very tip of the iceberg in terms of all of their research and findings. And if you're interested in reading more, and the research is actually very fascinating as you read through it, we will have a link to their full write-up shortly over at ktvb.com. Well, thinking back on a day that many of us thought we'd never see here in Boise, a mass shooting at the mall. You may remember this just last year. The physical and psychological effects lasted well beyond that one day, again, nearly 6 months ago, especially for the two families who lost loved ones that day. And one of those families believes the whole thing could have been avoided, and they are now filing a tort claim naming 12 defendants, including Boise, Meridian, and Idaho State Police. Now, police say that Jacob Bergquist shot and killed 49-year-old Roberto Padilla-Arguelles on an escalator in Macys during the shooting. His family says that Bergquist should never have been at the mall with a gun in the first place because of the previous encounters that those agencies we just talked about had with him. Now, the family says that local law enforcement officers were, quote, familiar with Bergquist and well aware of the heightened risk that he presented to the community, having had several interactions with him months before. And Boise Police Chief Ryan Lee said he was known to mall security before the shooting. Now, the family is asking for $500,000 from each defendant for a total of $6 million. 26-year-old Joe Acker, who is a mall security guard, was also killed that day. We also know that 4 other people were shot. Bergquist later died during a shootout with police after hiding behind a dumpster of a nearby business. Now, to be clear here, a tort claim isn't a lawsuit just yet. It's simply a notification of the intent to sue. And the agencies now have 90 days to respond to the tort claim. If they deny it, the family could then follow up with a full-on lawsuit. Big reminder for you that today is the last day to register to vote in person at your county clerk's office or online. Under Idaho law, those avenues close 25 days before Election Day. You can visit the Idaho Secretary of State's election website to register online. You'll need your driver's license or state-issued ID card number handy, so you need to enter that in the computer. Now, if you missed the deadline today, you don't need to panic. You can still actually register to vote at the polls on Election Day in Idaho. Just make sure that you bring your ID with you and keep an eye on your mailbox. Some counties are sending out mailers starting next week to let you know what your congressional, legislative, and local districts, precincts, and polling places, they may have changed. And some of you might have already gotten one of these in the mail letting you know you may have somewhere else to go vote this year. So double check that you have all that information correct before you head out to the polls on May 17th for the primary. And with the primary election coming up in less than a month, we've been getting a lot of questions sent in. And this morning, we got this text from Irma asking, what is Idaho Values First and why are they sending election applications? Maybe you got this in the mail. Our producer, Danny, she got the exact same thing in her mailbox, but we'll show you what looks inside, and you may have seen this or not. We'll explain it through. You can see that in this random mailer, it pre-fills out the name and address, which we blocked out for obvious reasons, but it's a form requesting an absentee ballot with a pre-stamped envelope attached, the return address, County Election Office in Ada County in Boise. Now, all the person would need to do is fill in their party affiliation, sign and date it. They could put it in the prepaid attached envelope and send it back. And as Irma mentioned to us, it came from an organization called Idaho Values First. And a quick Google search shows it is a nonprofit. But is this whole thing legal? We've got some questions. And how are they able to get names and addresses and fill that form out for us? So we reached out to Ada County Clerk Phil McGrain because that's where at least some of these mailers were supposed to be sent back. And he says to us this afternoon, this is legitimate and actually is more common than we realize. He says that a lot of organizations do this as a way to encourage people to get out and vote. He says as long as the organization is not advocating for or against a candidate, and as long as the return address is the elections office, the whole thing is completely legal. And candidates can do this as well, but they must add a disclaimer at the bottom that they are running for office. And Clerk McGrain says that red flags would be flying if the return address was not sent to the elections or county clerk's office. And that is not the only election-related question we've gotten over the last week, as you can imagine. We got another one here. Liz asks, can a voter write in a candidate from another party on the Republican ballot, and will that count as a write-in vote? That's a good question. So we reached out to the Secretary of State's office to get some clarification on this, and the simple answer for you is no. In order to be considered as a legitimate write-in candidate, you must have registered with the Secretary of State's office, and that write-in must also be affiliated with the party. So you could not write in a Democratic nominee on a Republican ballot. That vote simply just wouldn't count. And finally, Steve asks, after the primaries, can I change my current voter affiliation? And the short answer to that is yes, but after the May primary, there really is no need to change your affiliation, as the next election, the general election in November, it's open to everyone regardless of party status, meaning everyone's going to get the same ballot with the same options on it. So your affiliation really doesn't matter in November, only during a primary election, but if for whatever reason you want to change it after the primary, go for it. Your choice too. As you probably have heard on this program, we're not having a governor or lieutenant governor debate prior to the primary election, candidates choosing not to participate, but there are still other debates coming up, including 2 next week right here on KTVB. Here's what you need to know. Republican candidates for State Superintendent of Public Instruction, they'll debate right here on Channel 7 on Tuesday, and that includes incumbent Sherry Ibarra, Debbie Critchfield, and Brandon Durst. And then on Thursday of next week, the Republican candidates for Secretary of State, Mary Souza, Dorothy Moon, and Phil McGrain, they'll all have their chance to debate as well. Both the debates next week, Tuesday, Thursday, they will start at 6 o'clock. They will run for an hour. You can watch right here on Channel 7, and you can also watch at ktvb.com if you're away from your television. Oh, I love that. Well, it's Friday, which means it's time to call back some of your favorite stories from the week, and that includes a big birthday this week. Remember this? The Powerball in Idaho, it celebrated its 30th birthday back on Tuesday, and in its 30-year history in Idaho, 36 Idahoans have won prizes, making them millionaires. In 1995, Pam Hyatt won $90 million, but that was pennies compared to what Brad Duke won in 2005. He won $220 million, and that is still the record for the biggest payout in the state of Idaho history. Ironically, and highly improbable on paper, both of them bought their ticket at the same gas station in Boise. The Jackson's on Orchard Street, right in Boise, right off the interstate. Now today, it's known as the luckiest store in America because of that. And to mark the 30th birthday of Powerball, we were able to stop by the store and revisit the memories of Brad Duke when he won the big one, the Powerball jackpot. It's a celebration at a gas station for one round red regular. It's 30 years for Mr. Powerball. On April 19, 1992, a new lottery game, Powerball, sold its first tickets. And over the last 30 years in Idaho, Powerball has sold close to $900 million in tickets in the gem state. Idahoans have won more than $595 million in prizes, while also contributing about $400 million in dividends to benefit Idaho public schools and buildings. In 2005, Idahoan Brad Duke bought a Powerball ticket that would go on to be one of the biggest winners ever. And as a part of the Powerball celebration, Mr. Duke sat down with KTVB to reminisce about a dream so many have fantasized about, winning the lottery.
Who was I before?
Duke was working in management for a Treasure Valley Gold's Gym and was passionate about his career path. Even before winning $220 million, Duke felt he was on a great path toward success.
I really didn't think things could get better for me, and I remember thinking that, and within that week, this happened.
Duke won one of the largest Powerball prizes to date from the exact same gas station that Idahoan Pam Hyatt won her Powerball jackpot from a decade earlier. So, who was the first person Mr. Duke called? Well, it was his dad.
Dad, sit down and prepare for some life-changing news. And he says, oh, you're getting married. And I said, no. And he goes, well, you must be that guy that won the lottery.
Duke recalls still working at Gold's Gym right after he won the millions. He did have to leave shortly after because of all the attention and distractions coming their way.
And the phones were ringing off the hook at some point that had nothing to do with inquiries about the business. So, but I think I kept teaching spin class for over a year. Yeah, so I was still showing up and working twice a week on some level for well over a year.
Duke took a lump sum payout from his big win that, by the way, was a double win. Did you know this? Duke got first and third prize on the same ticket. But what to do with millions of dollars?
Best part of winning, being able to give back, in my retrospect, has been the best part.
Duke has worked to donate and contribute to Idaho communities through the Duke Family Foundation. Another passion for Duke, helping Idaho youth.
Our biggest partners are always youth mentoring programs, and the notion behind that is sometimes kids can't pick their own circumstance, but if you can influence a better circumstance for a kid and they go on to do something great, it's kind of the pay it forward thing that me and my family and my board really buy into, and that's our focus.
The money, as you can imagine, is of course incredible. How could it not be? Could you even make up what you would do in your head with all that money? Well, Duke says, without being cliche though, there is something from his journey that still brings him the most joy.
We didn't have a lot when we grew up, but for my parents to look upon what we've done in our family name and to see how proud my dad is as good as the projects itself at times.
So I just want to go back to this real quickly. Brad won $220 million on the jackpot, but again, he won another $10,000 on the third line of his ticket by matching a different set of numbers. That's just incredible. Brad says that he hasn't met his goal yet, though, of turning his money into $1 billion, but he says still a top 3 goal for him in his lifetime. Well, also on Tuesday, a little history about what was supposed to be the final piece of the grand entrance into the capital city. When it was first built, the Capitol Memorial Bridge was actually called the Oregon Trail Memorial Bridge, a tribute to the pioneers who made their way through Boise and apparently crossed the river at that point. And after doing a little bit of research, we learned there was a denial of that plan. And there was the kick-in of some federal cash, and then the job got done in record time.
The idea was to build Boise's Grand Boulevard, a park-like approach to the state capitol for visitors dropped off at the train depot. And to build it, well, they needed a bridge over the river. But when they brought a construction bond to Boise voters in 1927, they said no. Getting the U.S. Bureau of Public Roads involved gave them the green light. And that set local engineering firm Morrison Knudsen in motion. They took Charles Kyle's Art Deco design and hired 100 men to make it happen. Starting with the first pour of concrete on February 20th, 1931, those 100 men worked every day for 16 hours a day, according to the Idaho Statesman, and finished the 4 arches by April 18th. The floor 11 days later, just 68 days after they started. In May of that year, just before it was open to traffic, the Idaho Statesman wrote, 6 months ago, a dream. Today, a completed structure. Well, kind of. All that was left were the handrails, the artwork, and a general polishing to be put on it, and the Oregon Trail Memorial Bridge was done, 60 days ahead of schedule. It was dedicated that September, Tuesday the 15th, 1931. And as the reporter put it, the bridge and the boulevard form an approach to the city which is unequaled for stark beauty and simple grandeur by any bit of man-made highway in the West.
4-lane Capitol Boulevard Memorial Bridge is 310 feet long, and it hasn't changed much over the years, other than the deck being redone in 1987 and the whole bridge getting a makeover in 2013 for the city's sequential celebration. It was also added to the National Register of Historic Places in the year 1990. Hey, so watch out for the wind out there, geez. Well, it's becoming a Friday tradition here on the 208, Dog Fridays. Have you noticed the theme? This started with Mo the Basset Hound a few months ago. You may remember we had some segments called the 208. And ever since, we somehow found ourselves featuring dogs at the end of the show on Fridays. And most of the dogs have just been KTVB employee dogs. We bring into the studio. We have a great time. But today, oh boy, we have a special guest on the set. Are you ready for this? This may be our best pup update ever. This is Clover, and she is the very first Wellness K-9 with the Boise Police Department. She was here throughout the day, and she was rescued from the Idaho Humane Society last year. And ever since, she's been working with the men and women of Boise Police. So, what exactly does Clover do?
So what she does for us is she offers basically a reprieve for officers. We tend to go call to call and get caught up in our days. A lot of the stuff that we deal with is very traumatic, whether it's directly traumatic or vicarious through other people. And you tend to absorb that. And what Clover does is guys will come down to our downtown substation where she basically acts as our facility dog. And it gives them just a little bit of a 5-minute reprieve from their day-to-day where they pet her. Everybody kind of just gloms onto her and you see people smile. It takes them out of their head.
Clover, how are you today? Clover, can you tell me about your favorite treats? Clover, what do you think about the weather? All right, well, I've had tough interviews before, but I've never had one just walk out like that. Clover, do you like peanut butter? She's not much for conversation, but she is so sweet.
Oh man, I'm gonna be in so much trouble when I get home if my dog's watching for about what I'm gonna say. Clover may be the sweetest and kindest little pup that I have ever met. The way that she interacts with people, and I hope this came through in the video, she has some like magical power about her where she could just calm down everyone instantly. And so I am really happy that Boise Police have something like this really inside their office. Of course, we know that law enforcement, including Boise Police, they have some tough days and they have some tough times, but I gotta tell you, when you see Clover, the Wellness K-9, she is absolutely the sweetest. And if I have this, if I'm wearing the right pants, I am. Here we go. She has her own trading card there. And I know that we can't zoom in on it. I should have thought about this ahead of time. But she's a 45-pound English cream golden retriever. And she is so sweet. And of course, you can follow her online. I know she has her own TikTok. If you're on TikTok, you can follow her on Clover the Wellness K-9. But anyways, Clover, thank you so much. And Officer Maloof, thank you so much for joining us today. We'd love seeing you here at Channel 7. Thanks for joining us on the Friday 208. We got a few comments, I think, before we leave you. This person says, you're missing the chance to call it a pup date. Yes, I should have called it a pup date. I will next time. What else we got? One more? Oh, look at that sweet puppy. I don't know if there's a caption there. This is from Greg, I'm told. This is Greg's dog. Happy Friday, dog. Go hug your dog. Go hug your cat. Go hug your family. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather. Hold on to your hats. It's a little windy. We'll see you Monday.